Michigan Weekend, show number 55.
Hi there, welcome to Michigan Weekend. I'm Fred Trost.
And I'm Kathy Fleck.
And this week I'm getting ready for archery deer season. Not only getting my bow ready, but I'm polishing them up on some lessons that I learned last year on Boblo Island from Phil Grable. He's an expert archer. He showed me how to make a tree stand as well as a ground blind to stay hidden from deer in the woods. It should be something that'll pay off for me this year, I hope, and maybe for you too.
And we'll be visiting Isle Royale to see the wildlife there.
Have you been to Isle Royale, Kathy?
No, but Tom Sterling, our guest, has, and he's brought back some fantastic photography of it.
Michigan Weekend is brought to you in part by your one-stop shopping store, Meyer Thrifty Acres.
And by Michigan Out of Doors, Michigan's leading outdoor magazine.
And we'll be right back to talk about the wildlife on Isle Royale and archery, deer hunting, plus a lot more. But first, Kathy has a message about what you can do to help give your garage back to your car.
I'd like to welcome back Tom Sterling, a great photographer and wildlife lecturer. What do you have for us today, Tom?
We're going to Michigan's only national park. We have a national seashore, Sleeping Bear Dunes, but we only have one national park, and that's Isle Royale in Lake Superior. Isle Royale is a beautiful place for someone who wants to really appreciate wilderness. It has 168 miles of hiking trails. There are no motorized vehicles on the island except for one small Jeep that the Park Service uses. And to get there, you either have to take a boat from the mainland or fly over. Now, once you're there, you want to put a pack on your back or just take your lunch and perhaps stay at one of the lodges, either at Wendigo or up at Rock Harbor, if you wish. And you can just hike a trail during the day and come back to the lodge.
Not a Holiday Inn lodge.
No, but it's very nice.
What's this bird we have here?
We're watching a Canada jay, sometimes called the gray jay, and some of the old sourdoughs used to call these whiskey jacks. They have lots of common names, but the Canada jay is the correct name for them. Now, I'm feeding these Canada jays a food here. It's called, strangely enough, bird seed. Hikers often will carry this, and I carry it quite often. It's composed of M&M's candies, raisins, and peanuts.
Doesn't like that color?
You can tell, you can see here, he doesn't like M&M's candies. He's a pretty smart bird.
Huh. Bad for its teeth.
Continuing on the trails in Isle Royale, many of the older trails go across large beaver dams. And this particular beaver dam is about 150 feet long. Now, one of the things I like about exploring a national park is that the wildlife has not been molested for many years. So the beaver on Isle Royale, for instance, is diurnal. In other words, he comes out in the daytime. He's not a nocturnal animal like he is in areas where he's hunted or trapped. And that's the beauty of sitting on these dams. The beavers will come out in the daytime, and you can observe them in many activities and get extremely close to them. And sometimes they'll come close to you, just out of mere curiosity. Here we have a pair of beavers. You might notice there's a bit difference in size in these two animals. Apparently, the one in the back is the male. I'm pretty sure he is. He gets up around 75 or 80 pounds, and the female in the foreground won't get much over 45 or 50 pounds.
I had no idea they were that big.
In fact, they're North America's largest rodent. Now, one of the easiest and surest ways of getting beaver to come out and spend some time around you is to put beaver candy out in the pond. Beaver candy is aspen. There isn't anything that the beaver likes more than aspen. But you may find another resident of the pond paying a visit to your aspen. A lot of people, upon seeing this little creature, might think it's a young beaver, but in actuality, it's a muskrat. And muskrats are often residents in beaver ponds.
How can you tell the difference?
Well, he weighs about 2.5 to 3 pounds, and the beaver weighs 45 or 50. Much larger animal. They look identical except just for size. And of course, the beaver has a big, broad, flat tail, and the muskrat has a rat-shaped tail.
How, you said that it was the largest rodent, the beaver. How is a rodent defined?
Rodents are defined by their teeth. They have large gnawing teeth in the front that are constantly worn down when the animal gnaws. If the animal should be unlucky enough not to have the teeth meet, then they'll pass each other, and they grow continuously. It'll go up into the head of the animal, the teeth will, and kill it eventually. And there have been many instances of this. Naturalists have found woodchucks, squirrels, beavers, a lot of these rodents where the teeth did not meet like they should, and they passed each other, were not worn down properly, and wound up killing the animal. Well, we've left the beaver pond, and we're continuing along a trail on the north side of the island called Manong Ridge. Many people, when they hike, very often pass up the little things. And this is a little thing. This is a confrontation between two colonies of carpenter ants. And it happened that the confrontation took place right in the middle of the trail. And I just laid down on my stomach and took the camera and put on some close-up lenses and enjoyed their little confrontation here. I don't agree what was the problem. It could have been territorial. It might have been anything. But ants, of course, they don't see as well as they smell. And they smell with their antenna. And if one ant meets another one and it doesn't have the same smell as his colony smell, a fight will ensue, which took place there.
Incredible.
It was still going on when I left. I sat there for 2 hours and they were still fighting, so I finally got tired of their little confrontation and left. Down along the lakeshore of Lake Superior, in the fall of the year, in late August, early September, you might run into some color. A lot of people go to Isle Royale to photograph the lichens. Lichens on the rocks of Isle Royale are very unique. But occasionally you might run into some what look like orange lichens, but on close inspection you'll find that they're ladybird beetles. Ladybird beetles often form big aggregates like this in the fall of the year for hibernation. As you can see, 2 of them are using their aggregation for other purposes.
Do they cover with anything or burrow, or they just...
They just aggregate in a big ball and seek mutual warmth. And they hibernate over the winter. Now we're just going to enjoy some of the color and the solitude and the beauty of Isle Royale. In the fall of the year, when you get the cool temperatures, you'll very often find the fog spreading across the meadows in the morning. And I just enjoy listening to the sounds and literally breathing this kind of atmosphere.
It's beautiful. It's always such a pleasure to see your excellent photography, Tom. And I understand that you'll be back next week with some footage on moose.
Yes, we'll be back next week, and next week we're going to do material on the largest animals that inhabit Isle Royale, the moose.
Should be great. Fred will be right back with archery deer hunting in just a minute.
Well, with deer season coming up October 1st, that's archery deer season, that is, there's just going to be hundreds of thousands of hunters out in the woods, probably with bows, trying it for their first time this year. Like myself, I haven't been bow hunting before, but I've been inspired by a lot of people who say it's just the greatest thing going. And after some thinking, should I buy a recurve or a compound, I decided to get a compound bow. On the compound, I'm shooting with sights. This is something that Phil Grable taught me last year, how to shoot with sights. Just line up the bowstring as you look down it with the sights, and by golly, I found last year that I can hit a pie plate consistently at 20 yards with sights like that. Have a quickie quiver here for the arrow. Whole outfit you can get for under $150. You can be ready for bow hunting. But after you have an outfit, the hard part really begins. Let's go to Boblo Island in northern Lake Michigan, or Lake Huron, where last year Phil Grable, a tournament archer, showed me some tips on how to get ready for deer hunting, how to make a blind. First of all, a buck rub. Every deer hunter is familiar with a buck rub. This is a small sapling that a buck will use to scrape the velvet off his antlers with. Also around the buck rubs, in this particular case, there were scrapes. The bucks will come up, scrape the ground with their hooves, urinate there. The does will do the same, and they'll use that as sort of a rendezvous point. Well, if you put a deer blind near buck rubs and scrapes, there's a good chance that you'll at least see some deer. Phil dug a pit blind right here, a ground blind where he can move around, get visibility from both sides. Of course, that's one way of hunting deer, but a ground blind, as you can see, this camera point of view shows you where the deer would have been, and of course they could have looked right in Phil's eyes. Now, a deer coming out into a clearing is going to come very cautiously, combing the brush with its eyes, looking all around, but will it see something up in a tree? Chances are, unless it's a lot of movement, it won't. That's why many hunters are going to tree blinds, which are now legal in Michigan. But there are some safety tips you have to be aware of if you're going to be using a tree blind. First of all, you don't want to try climbing up a tree with a bow that is outfitted with a lot of sharp broadheads. If you have a natural tree blind, in other words, you're just up there on some limbs, maybe you've done a little handiwork with some 2x4s, you'll want to climb up there and retrieve your bow, which you've tied to a string. Pull it up, and you're going to find it's going to be a lot safer, a lot easier, and chances are you won't have any close calls where you might break your bow or your arrows. It's still extremely important to stay quiet in a tree blind. A deer, if it did happen to glance up, would see you if you were moving around. But chances are a tree blind is going to give a hunter a lot better chance at seeing more deer, if not a better chance at bagging one. Now, where's a good place to put a blind? Well, of course, if you can get in an apple orchard, you just might have it made. Deer just love to eat the apples that drop from the trees. They'll even reach up in the trees to nibble them off the branches. Now here Phil Grable is illustrating how to climb a different tree blind. This is one that's out in a meadow in an old orchard. Of course, it's not easy, as I said, to climb a tree blind. Oftentimes you got to be in shape, and it's something that all hunters should do before deer season. Do some exercises, some push-ups, sit-ups, get yourself limber, because that can be mighty strenuous. When you get up in the blind, then is when you're going to want to knock your arrow and get ready to get down to some serious hunting. If you want a blind that'll give you good visibility, won't have too many branches and twigs in the way, one like this. When Phil gets up there, he automatically checks around because there's no telling. A deer might be coming out just at the time he is up there. Somebody might have scared one. After he's sure that at least he doesn't see any deer in the area, then he puts on the rest of his camouflage gear. Wearing camouflage clothing is mighty important too. You really have to take almost every precaution to hide yourself from the deer. They're so wary. Their ears, their eyes, their nose, all of their senses are continually working in the woods year-round, not just during deer season. And it's quite a feat to outsmart them. Now, sitting in a deer blind, you are going to want to move around, undoubtedly. You get, cramps now and then, and it's a good idea to, say a branch that you might be sitting on, smooth it off, so that as you move, you're not going to drop little pieces of bark down onto the ground or make any noises that might scare the deer, or scare other animals that might scare the deer. But don't let me give you the impression that the first thing you do is just go climb a tree to start hunting. There's some precautions here, some things that Phil recommends that every hunter does before he gets up into the blind. One thing is pace off a few distances around the blind. Pace them off so that they will be, if you're using sights, you'll know how far away the deer is. Sometimes you get excited and it's hard to remember, so he paces off some areas, and for example here he's piling up some apples. He knows that this pile of apples might be 30 yards away from his blind. In another spot he'll put a stick, one that is bleached from the sun, lay that out in the ground, so he knows that stick might be 20 yards away in another direction. He knows there are deer around here, deer pellets in the grass under the apple trees. Excellent sign, fresh sign. So he reaches up into the tree, shakes off a few more apples onto the ground. Gives some easy pickings for the deer when they come through. Okay, now back up in the tree. The first thing that Phil recommends is sight in your bow on those apples or those sticks, twigs, whatever you've marked out to be distances, just to make sure that your judgment is correct, because shooting up high, shooting down at an angle is different than shooting horizontally on the ground. So he checks it out and makes sure that his sights are right on. So he's ready to go. There are tree stands which are commercially made. You can climb up, attach them to the side of the tree. For me, they're a little risky. There's a fellow on Boblo Island last year when I was up there taking these pictures, broke his leg, fell out of a tree blind. So I'm going to stick to a natural blind at least this year. And Phil shows here how he would step across. He wouldn't hesitate to move. If the deer was looking the other direction, he'd move in order to get a better alignment for a shot. So there's a shot he'd take. And by the way, the photographs of the deer that you saw right there and are going to see are ones that I took out of that blind just one evening earlier before Phil and I made this little film on how to construct and use tree blinds. So that's what I hope to see this archery season sometime in the first week, and I'm sure you will too. Well, what do you do if you get a deer? What do you do if you get all sorts of game or fish? Well, we have a number of recipes here on Michigan Weekend, which you certainly should follow, but hey, here's a book that you ought to get. Wildlife Chef. It's put out by Michigan United Conservation Clubs. Many, many recipes in here that I've found really handy. In fact, a number of them are going to be on Michigan Weekend in future months. And here's the details on how you can get your copy. The Wildlife Chef has sections on big and small game and game birds, how to prepare them and cook them. Loads of fish recipes that include smoking and canning, with special sections on Michigan plants that you can use and a lot more. Over 300 recipes in all. Now this new revised edition can be yours. Send $3.95 to MUCC, Wildlife Chef, Lansing 48909. You'll get your copy right away. The Wildlife Chef. You'll be as successful in the kitchen as you are in the field. Order it today. With hunting season coming up, not too many fishermen are thinking of inland fishing. Most of them, if they're thinking about fishing, are thinking about salmon in the Great Lakes. But let's go to some of the inland master angler fish that have been reported recently to the DNR. Here's a largemouth bass caught by Bob Leitz. He caught it in Spring Lake, Oakland County on a black plastic worm. That goes 6 pounds, 3 ounces. Now we have 3 smallmouth bass have finally been entered in Master Angler. This one by Dan Perry. He caught it in Skegamog Lake in Kalkaska County. That's a real productive lake. Caught it on a Rebel Deep Wee R. That's 5.5 pounder. Another smallmouth caught by Dick Goodman of Midland. He caught it in Bel Air Lake, Antrim County, still fishing with a night crawler, 6 pounds, 3 ounces. Here's another one, 6 pounds, 4 ounces, caught by Bruce May, also in Lake Bel Air, Antrim County, on a night crawler. Now in the walleye category, we've had a few entries here. Bill Brown was fishing in Manistee Lake, and he on a green J-plug, obviously fishing for salmon, but he caught an 8.5 pound walleye. Ken Levin caught a 9 pound, 11 ounce walleye up in St. Mary's River. He was fishing for walleye, evidently, with a Rebel Deep Diver. That's up in Chippewa County. And back down in Manistee, Lake Manistee, casting with a twister, Chuck Thompson took an 8 pound, 12 ouncer. Now, northern pike. You wonder where the big northern pike come from? Apparently, all of them come from the UP. Here's one more caught by Andy Moran. Portage Lake, Houghton County, trolling with a sinking Rapala. 26.5 pounds. Now, we don't have a picture of this other one, but also from Portage Lake in Houghton County, trolling with a spoon plug, a 21.5 pounder was caught by Dennis Wake. And Great Lakes Muskie. Here's another big one, a 21 pounder caught from Anchor Bay, Lake St. Clair, trolling with a jointed pikey minnow. That was caught by Albert Norcus. And we'll throw one salmon in here, can't resist, a 32 pounder caught in Lake Michigan off Van Buren County on a thin fin by William McLean. And of course, to keep up on Master Angler information, check out Michigan Out of Doors. It has information in there, all sorts of outdoor things every month. Another thing that's going to be in Michigan Out of Doors that's coming up is the announcement of a contest. Now, I'm sure you have all seen this blank before, at least all of you deer hunters who remember back maybe 10, 15 years. Michigan Outdoors Deer Hunting Contest. There it is, sponsored by Leonard Refineries. Well, the sponsors of Michigan Weekend, Meyer Thrifty Acres and Michigan Out of Doors, announced that we are having a deer hunting contest this fall, a big buck contest. The rules are a little different than Mort Neff used to have on his big buck contest. Instead of the inside spread on antlers, we're going to measure the maximum outside spread. Now this, I realize, is a very small set of antlers, but it illustrates the point. For For example, this would be 8 inches, maximum outside spread. To that, we add the number of points, which is 6. This would score 14 points. Likely not to be a winner by any means. Now, how do you tell a point? Instead of measuring the length, what we're going to do is we're going to take a metal ring about 1.5 inches, 2 inches in diameter, put it on the tines, and if it hangs on the tine, then it qualifies as a point. Now, what about the tines that are small and jut out at strange angles? Well, Dave Jenkins is going to be the judge. He's the chief of the Wildlife Division at the DNR. He's going to judge this contest and proclaim what's a point and what isn't. Now, we do have some big prizes. We have 7 of them to be exact. One here is a Ruger 30-06, a Remington 30-06 automatic, a Marlin 30-30 lever action, Mossberg 12-gauge pump with a slug barrel, Winchester Model 94 antlered game commemorative. Boy, that's a dandy prize right there. A Thompson Center Hawkins black powder musket kit and an Outer Stinger compound bow. We're going to have more on the deer contest, the prizes in future Michigan Weekend shows, along with some past winners of the Michigan Outdoors Big Buck Contest, so you're going to want to stay tuned. Also, you're going to want to stay tuned for this. Here's one of our prizes, a Mossberg shotgun. It's on sale this week at Meijer. Just listen to these prices. Remington dove and quail loads or 12-gauge rabbit and squirrel loads, only $2.89 a box. That's right, only $2.89 this week at Meijer. And check out the price on this Mossberg 12-gauge pump. It takes 3-inch magnums, all-around good bird hunting gun. Also included is an extra slug barrel with rifle sights for southern Michigan deer hunting. How can you go wrong? 2 guns in 1. Shotgun shells at the lowest price in town. Make the Sporting Goods Department at Meijer your hunting headquarters. Well, Kathy, here's a new aspect of Michigan Weekend, a hunting and fishing forecast for the weekend. Something that I got the information from Michigan Travel Bureau, from district offices of the DNR, and I'll give you the scoop here in the next 2 minutes, along with some of the sources. Carol Schmidt, the radio dispatcher from the Newberry office, the DNR reports that in Newberry, 12 bear were checked in as of last weekend. And as far as grouse go, at least in the eastern part of the Upper Peninsula, southern Luce County seems to be the only hot spot that we'll say is better than maybe the rest. The lower peninsula, the story for most biologists, we draw a line from Bay City to Muskegon. Grouse season is open north of this. Grouse just aren't there the way they were a year ago, except in maybe a few areas. What are those areas? Well, one conservation officer reports maybe around Houghton Lake they're up a few. Who knows? We'll let time tell. There is so much foliage, though, it makes it difficult for the grouse and squirrel hunters. Woodcock populations seem to be up, though. They seem to be plentiful as well as squirrel. What are sportsmen doing now? Basically, I think you're going to find they're fishing. Not inland fishing, although inland fishing really should be good. The biologists all over the state, especially in the northern areas, report pike, walleye, bass. Golly, all of these fish are hitting more and more each day. Bluegill in the northern areas are down maybe in 12 feet of water. You can catch them on redworms or crickets seem to be the preferred bait. But where are the fishermen? Well, you remember last weekend, remember how miserable it was? Stormy, windy, rain. Well, those rains swelled the streams all around Michigan. And Dave Johnson reports from Plainwell down in Berrien Springs, all the way to Berrien Springs Dam. By this weekend, we should have coho and chinook. Same story, the Grand River, the Muskegon River. Well, Muskegon, for example, is expected to have a run, John Trimberger says, better than last year's. Bernie Yolkinen says from the Cadillac office, he expects the lake fishing to hold for another 2 weeks. It will take us until the end of September off Lake Michigan. That's some good news for lake fishermen. And Gary Schnicke reports here, Oscoda Harrisville, which has really been hot. The only problem with it over here, there's so many people coming up from Detroit and all over on the weekends. It's so crowded. If you're going to fish this area, it's recommended you try during the week. A lot less crowded, a lot better.
Looks like some great hunting coming up in Michigan.
I'm sure.
Hope you can get outdoors this weekend because it's a great place to be. Michigan Weekend is brought to you by Myers 50 Acres and by Michigan Out of Doors.
Now, next week on Michigan Weekend, that's some real interesting items for you hunters and fishermen. For fishermen, we have a fish story you're not going to believe. I won't say any more, but you're going to want to tune into this. We're going to clarify some game laws that, well, there's been some errors in the game law guides that have come out this year. We're going to correct those, tell about the public access program where you can hunt in southern Michigan. Moose on Isle Royale, a special by Tom Sterling, along with a great recipe on cherry-baked salmon. Don't miss it.